Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like-minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but 2 of my last 3 trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
I got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there, and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh no, 15-hour flight.
Amateur Traveler, episode 693. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about beaches and fog and forests and hiking, tide pools and jet boats and sand dunes as we go to the Oregon coast. Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Let's talk about Oregon. I'd like to welcome to the show Jessica Baker from BoundlessBakers.com, who's come to talk to us about the Oregon coast. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you for having me.
And you are currently coming to us from Orlando. What were you doing out on the Oregon coast and the trip that we're going to talk about?
Well, my family and I have been traveling in a RV for the past 13 months. So we have seen quite a bit of the country, and probably our favorite stop so far, where we spent 12 weeks, was the Oregon coast this past spring. And now we're in Florida.
And you say your family, and I understand that to be you, your husband, 2 kids, 3 and 5, and 3 cats.
That is correct. So we have a 35-foot trailer just full of love, full of little people, lots of cats, and that's our family.
Excellent. And why should we go to the Oregon coast?
Well, probably the number one reason to go to the Oregon coast is it is absolutely gorgeous. Like I said, we've been traveling the U.S. And up into Canada for the past 13 months. And the Oregon coast is probably one of the most unique and probably the most beautiful areas that we've seen this far. So just the natural beauty of it, it truly is where the forest meets the sea, and between the lush green forest and the rocky, rugged coastline, it's just absolutely gorgeous.
And when we say where the forest meets the sea, are we using a slogan from some tourism board? That really sounded like someone had thought through that.
No, that is like, I don't know if I'd heard that somewhere
Maybe you
before, but
call them and we can make that their official motto. Excellent. What were you going to start us?
Well, I'm going to start us in Northern Oregon. So what I thought we would do is we could break it up kind of in a couple different sections along the coast and talk about what to do in each area, things to see, and that sort of stuff. But I figured we would start at the top in Northern Oregon.
Great. Okay. So for a Californian like me, just listen to what you say and put everything in reverse. I got it.
Exactly. We actually came up from California, so we did it in reverse. But I figured we'd just start from the top for this sake.
So you're going to start at Astoria?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, we RV. So when we were in Northern Oregon, we stayed at a RV campground in Seaside, Oregon, which is it is basically just west of Portland. It's where a lot of local Portlandians, I believe they call themselves, where they go out to the coast. So it's a beautiful little seaside town. Astoria is just, I want to say, an hour north of Seaside.
Mm-hmm. And Astoria is where the Columbia River, the mouth of the Columbia River. You're just a little further south of that.
That is correct. Yep. So the Columbia River flows into the sea there. That's where Lewis and Clark National Historical Park is. So you can actually visit Fort Clatsop is where Lewis and Clark, that was kind of like their base when they were in the area. It's up there near Astoria. Another thing we loved about the Astoria area is the Astoria Tower. So it's this, I don't know exactly how tall it is, but it's this historical tower that sits atop one of the hills in Astoria. You can actually climb the steps to it, and they sell little wooden airplanes there for $1, and you can as you're taking in the views, like the magnificent views of the city and the river and the sea, you can actually throw your little wooden airplanes off and watch them kind of float down into the nearby forest, and it's really cool. My kids absolutely loved it, as did I.
I was going to say that sounds perfect for a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 59-year-old for me.
I enjoyed it just as much as they did. That was kind of that was probably one of our highlights in Astoria was the tower, and then also kind of getting some of the history of when Lewis and Clark were in the area. So definitely all worth checking out.
And I guess the idea behind it being a paper airplane is that it's biodegradable.
Correct. Yep, absolutely. Because chances are you're never going to see it again unless it happens to float straight down. But we definitely did not get ours back.
Okay.
So then kind of moving a little bit further south, as I said, we stayed in Seaside, Oregon. Kind of some of the top attractions that we enjoyed in that area. First one was Ecola State Park. Anyway, Ecola State Park. So beautiful, lots of history. Lewis and Clark actually were in that area as well. So there's a couple historical attractions there. We did a wonderful hike there, the Clatsop Loop Trail. It's I believe it was about 2.5 miles long. And it actually takes you up. So it is quite a bit of elevation change, but the views from the top are gorgeous. You can actually see quite a few miles out into the sea, where you can actually take a look at the Tillamook Rock Lighthouse, which is about a mile and a half off the coast. It's no longer in use, but it's just this tiny little rock with a tiny little lighthouse on it, and you get a great view of it from the top of that trail. So definitely an area I would suggest checking out for, again, the beaches and the hiking trails. South of Ecola State Park is where Cannon Beach is. Cannon Beach is probably one of the better known areas of the Oregon coast. It's, I think, most known
in terms of, if you've seen pictures of the Oregon coast, this is probably what you've seen pictures of.
Yeah, chances are you're looking at a picture of Haystack Rock, which is a 235-foot sea stack that is just off the coast of the beach there. When the tide's out, you can actually get pretty pretty close to it. They don't really encourage climbing on it, but you can get pretty close to it when the tide's out. So beautiful, picturesque little town. And then, yeah, just getting up close and personal with Haystack Rock is kind of one of those experiences you want to have when you're in that area. Continuing on south, just south of Cannon Beach, we really enjoyed an area. It's called Hug Point State Recreation Site. So again, it's kind of like a state park, a protected area. But what it is it's a recreation site right on the coast. It's actually a beach area, and the beach is only accessible at low tide. So I highly emphasize making sure you check the tides if you want to go there, because there's nothing to see when the tide's in. So definitely check the tides.
Got it.
Head out right at low tide so you are able to, get as much time out there as possible. So Hug Point. So what it is back in the Lewis and Clark days, the stagecoaches, before there was a road there, the stagecoaches would actually drive along this area only at low tide, and they'd kind of have to hug this point in order to get around this rocky point on the coast. Hence why it's called Hug Point. And it's really cool because you can actually see the wheel ruts that have been carved into the rock from the stagecoaches that used to travel there. It's super neat. What else is cool about this recreation site are there's a couple waterfalls, little waterfalls that you can kind of climb around the rocks and check out. Tons of tide pooling. So I know my kids loved the tide pools of the Oregon coast, as did I. This area has some great tide pools. There's actually pools that form within the wheel ruts from the stagecoaches, which is pretty neat. Lots of little sea caves to explore. So again, you don't want to be stuck in there as the tide's coming in. So another reason to make sure you have an eye on the tides, because these little caves are super cool to explore. Lots of little creatures in there, and super fun area to check out. So definitely recommend going there.
Well, and just in general, I want to give people just a little bit of overview. If you're thinking about the coast, and you're thinking about the Oregon coast, this is going to be a different coast from some that we've talked about. Weather-wise, for one thing, you say Oregon coast, and I picture a kind of gray, foggy day. Mm-hmm. And I suspect because most, but not all, the days that I've had on the Oregon coast have been those kind of secluded, me on the beach and nobody else kind of days.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to be out on the beach. Depending on the time of year, I heard that. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of weeks in the summer where you can be out there in your swim trunks and bathing suit, but we were there in the spring, and we were definitely in our sweatshirts and rain jackets, but it was still absolutely just beautiful.
So I'm picturing this as a trip we're talking about for people who want to get out into the state parks, get out, stroll on the beach, not necessarily swim.
Correct.
And aren't there for the nightlife.
Yeah, it's definitely you're not lounging on the beach getting a suntan. It's more of exploring just the amazing landscape. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely like a more active trip, I would say. But definitely sitting on the beach reading a book you're able to do that as well.
Sure, if you've got a sweatshirt.
Exactly.
Cool. Where to next?
A little bit more about the northern coast. I know we just talked about not wanting to swim, but there's actually some of the best surfing can be found at Short Sand Beach, and this is just south of Cannon Beach. We did not surf, but this Short Sand Beach is where all the locals go and go surfing. Obviously, they have full wetsuits on. There's lots of little beach shops nearby where you're able to rent surfboards and surf equipment if that's something you want to try. But we did not. So we just walked out to the beach. Getting out to the beach is a cool little adventure all on its own. It's about a mile round trip, so half a mile out, half a mile back. And you actually walk through this, it's an old growth forest. So that dense, lush, thick green forest you think of in Oregon, you actually get to walk through that out to the beach. So it's kind of like a secluded little beach through the forest, and it's beautiful. So definitely recommend checking that out. It's kind of like a little local hangout, a little bit less known area. And again, if you're into surfing, so I hear that is the top surf spot in Oregon. So people do go swimming, just in wetsuits.
Sure.
So yeah, that's kind of my recommendations as far as the northern Oregon coast go. Then I figured we could kind of keep on heading south and talk about the central Oregon coast.
Okay.
So while we were in that area, we stayed in a cute little fishing town of Newport, Oregon. We stayed at a campground there. There's all along the Oregon coast, there's tons of seaside campgrounds, state parks, just anything you would need to kind of be able to get up close and personal to the coast while camping. So we stayed at Whalers Rest RV and Camping Resort, which is just south of Newport. Newport itself is a great little historic town, known for its fishing. They have a cute little bayfront area with tons of shopping, dining, and there's actually a sea lion dock there. So they're California seals that come up to Oregon during the spring, and they kind of all collect around this dock area there in the bayfront of Newport area. And it's great to go out there and you can get up close and personal with the sea lions. Don't mind the smell, but they're super cute and fun to look at. So definitely recommend doing that. With or without kids, it's fun.
Well, that's the danger in being in Oregon at any time, is that there are always Californians ruining the place. So
that's funny. Yes. Hopefully they don't all smell like that, but that's funny.
No, fortunately.
Also in Newport, there is an area called Nye Beach. And we were told this is kind of the more locals hangout area. So most of the tourists will congregate around the historic bayfront area. Nye Beach is a hip little area full of restaurants, shopping, nightlife, right on the beach. And it just has more of like that local feel. We went to dinner there one night, my husband and I. We had grandma was in town visiting us, so she was back at the camper watching the kids, and we went and checked out Nye Beach, and just loved the vibe there. Definitely didn't feel like you were in like a touristy town. So definitely recommend that in Newport. Also in Newport, if you're into breweries, Newport is home to Rogue Brewing, which is one of the probably better known craft beers. So we were actually camped, I want to say maybe a mile from Rogue. So we frequented the brewery quite often. It actually has a restaurant with gorgeous views over the bay, obviously wonderful beer, and it's very kid friendly actually. They have like a little play area for the kids to hang out at while the parents can get in some relaxation and some good beer. So I'd recommend checking that out as well.
And a little tiny train. That's what I'm seeing on their pictures. They're showing a Rogue Brewery little tiny train.
Oh, I think I missed the tiny train.
I don't know if maybe they're not doing it anymore, but
we'll have to go back.
They still have pictures of it on their website.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, and right next to the brewery is a fun little place for the whole family. It's the fishing pier. So locals will go out on this pier. I believe at low tide, I want to say it is, at low tide, and it's one of the best places to go crabbing in the area. So we actually, while we were in Oregon, because we were there for so long, like I said, we were there for 12 weeks, we actually got an annual shellfish license because we wanted to try our luck at clamming and crabbing. So we actually went out on the fishing pier there next to Rogue Brewing, and we did some crabbing. We got one crab, and it was delicious. And right there at low tide as well is a great area for clamming. So you actually can go out into the sand. They rent there's equipment rental shops throughout Newport.
Which would be a small shovel.
Yeah, well,
clamming.
So we actually just
But crabbing, I think of crab traps. How are you catching crabs?
So we actually bought a little fold-up trap. It's not like the box as you probably are picturing I pictured. This is it's kind of like a net with like spring action. So you place your bait inside of this net. We use chicken. There's a little hook that you put your bait on, and the net goes down into the water open. So the bait is exposed, and as you pull it back up, the net kind of closes. So we purchased one of those, and it was really inexpensive. I can't remember off the top of my head, because we knew we were going to be going more than once, so we just kind of figured buy it instead of rent it. But you can just rent the equipment when you're getting your license. You can get a 1-day license and rent the equipment at a number of places in town. So that's for crabbing. And then for clamming, again, you'll need the shellfish license, and you can go out there with your own shovels, or you can rent. They have these kind of like big, this big tool that will punch out holes into the sand and then allow you to kind of scoop up whatever under there. And you can rent those as well. But it's super fun, kind of a unique experience, especially if you're camping, as I highly suggest you do on the Oregon coast. You can take your goodies back to your campsite, and over a open fire, boil up some crab, or steam your clams. So it's delicious and fun. So you can do all of that right there off the fishing pier in Newport. So definitely an experience I recommend having if you're able to.
Well, and you had skipped over Lincoln, Oregon, and I remember when I was a kid, I went through and there was an amusement park in Lincoln, Oregon, and I looked, and it has been closed for some time now. It was apparently open when I was through in 1969 and for 4 more years. So
oh, wow. Yeah.
Now it is just part of lore.
That's funny. Yeah, we drove through Lincoln. We didn't really stop. A great little town I was going to mention that's up near Lincoln, I believe it's just south of Lincoln and north of Newport, is Depot Bay. Adorable little fishing village. It's actually totes itself as the whale watching capital of Oregon. And it's also the world's smallest harbor. So there, which I didn't even know if that.
I don't know what that means.
So I'll tell you what it means. So where the boats dock is kind of in this little bay area, and to get back out into the sea from the bay, you have to go through this small inlet, like right at the coast.
Under the highway.
Yeah, basically there's a bridge. Yeah, and it's under the highway. And apparently it gets pretty treacherous right there with the rocks and the waves, and it's a very dangerous small harbor. We actually had a whale watching tour scheduled out of Depot Bay, and it was canceled because they couldn't get out of the bay because it was just too dangerous. So the Coast Guard will actually close that harbor fairly often because it's just so treacherous. But we were able to do some whale watching right there in the town, right on the coast. There's like the whale watching station. I don't know if it's like a state-run whale watching area or what it is, but they have a little station set up with like binoculars and information on whales, and there's usually like a ranger there to answer any questions. So we actually went there and were able to do our whale watching since we weren't able to get out on the boat. But yeah, Depot Bay, super cute little town, and where to go for whale watching.
And yes, the Depot Bay Whale Watching Center is a state park.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, definitely recommend checking that out. And the last area I wanted to mention in the central Oregon coast area is called Cape Perpetua, and this is actually south of Newport. And it is part of the Siuslaw National Forest. Basically, it's a headlands area, so kind of where the land kind of jets out into the sea, and it's a great little area for hiking, beautiful beaches, all those kind of more adventurous things. Some of the cool areas that we checked out while in Cape Perpetua, and I believe it's a state park. Things that we checked out, there's a cool rock formation called Thor's Well. And basically what that is, it's there's an area of volcanic bedrock, and there's a hole that's been kind of formed over, I guess, millions and millions of years of the waves crashing into the bedrock, and it's created kind of this like
it's a blowhole.
Yeah, it's created like this hole where high tide, the waves kind of crash out of it and swirl around and make this just like awesome thing to view, just like the sea, going crazy in it. And then at low tide, you're able to walk along the rocks and actually get a look into the hole, which is really cool to be able to see the waves kind of crashing around lower in it and not have to worry about it, like, taking you down. But really cool area to check out. There's also a great hike. There's a hike up to the top of the headlands, or else you're able to actually just drive up to the top. But basically, it's an overlook where you're able to see about 70 miles in each direction. So you're able to see 70 miles on a clear day, of course, which are sort of few and far between in this area. We caught it on a clear day. But you're able to see 70 miles in each direction down and up the coast, and about 40 miles out into the sea. So it's just spectacular views of the Oregon coast. It's awesome. And again, you're able to hike up there. There's a hike, I believe, that starts from the visitor center, or else there is a parking lot you're able to just drive up to. Either way, definitely worth getting up there and checking the view out. So.
Okay. Well, and you said on a clear day, and we've said a couple things about the weather in Oregon, and I don't want people to think we're saying it in a negative
not
fashion.
At all.
One of the things I like about Oregon is those cool cloudy days, but I just want people to be prepared that that's what they're going to see there.
Yeah, I mean, we actually got pretty. I don't want to say lucky, but we actually got quite a few sunny days while we were in Oregon. Way more than we had anticipated. So the sun does come out, but as you had mentioned, those foggy kind of moody days, as Oregon is known for, are awesome. So.
Well, and what happens on the California coast, and I suspect on the Oregon coast, is you'll often burn off the fog in the middle of the day, and then it'll roll back in. And so where I grew up on the central coast of California, for instance, you would typically have fog burn off by 10 o'clock in the morning and then come back in at 3 or 4 o'clock.
Right.
And so, if you're likely to have sun, it's going to be in the middle of the day.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We definitely.
And some days it doesn't burn
exactly.
off. So.
Yeah. But we did notice that to be true a lot while on the Oregon coast as well. So.
But that also means that even in the wintertime, it doesn't get that cold.
Right.
It doesn't get that hot in the summer. It doesn't get that cold in the winter because of that kind of fog. It's always around the same kind of temperature.
Right.
So this is actually, you'll get more rain in the wintertime, but I can't say that there's a time of year you shouldn't go to the Oregon coast. You're just going to see it differently.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. Absolutely.
Where to next?
I'm moving a little bit further down the coast. A cool area I recommend checking out. It's called Devil's Punch Bowl. Okay. It's another natural phenomenon along the coast that is definitely something I recommend checking out. But basically what it is, and I believe it's not a state park, but it's
a state natural area.
There we go. That's exactly what it is. But anyway, so it is a massive bowl that has basically been carved out of the rocks right along the coast. And at high tide...
It's a cave that the roof has collapsed.
Okay, well, there we go. So at high tide, you're able to view it from overhead and look down into it and watch kind of like the waves churning in it. Again, it's kind of like a punch bowl. beautiful sight to see. But when I actually recommend going to check it out is at low tide, because you're able to go in it. So we went at low tide. We hiked down probably half a mile north of the Punch Bowl itself. You're able to access the beach and then kind of walk back down the beach towards it. It was one of the coolest beaches I've ever experienced. And again, it's only accessible at low tide, but you're kind of able to walk amongst the tide pools. There's more sea caves in that area. And then, of course, the Punch Bowl itself. So you're able to go in it, check it out. It's a really cool experience. It's kind of a little nerve-wracking because, the sea's not the most predictable thing in the world, and I definitely wouldn't want to be stuck in there when it starts rolling back in. So it was a little scary, but it was really, really cool. So I'd recommend going at low tide so you're able to actually go in and explore. So those are kind of my recommendations for the central area of the coast.
Okay.
And then lastly, I figured we could head down to the southern Oregon coast.
Well, and let's just put Devil's Punch Bowl on the map. We're at Otter Rock,
There you go.
Oregon, which actually itself sounds like an interesting thing. There's apparently a rock there with otters on it. So
Perfect.
I don't know what that means. You're in the Otter Rock Marine Reserve.
Yep.
And if you get a chance to see otters in any of the coasts along the west, they are just so adorable that you can stand and watch them for hours.
They are pretty stinking adorable. Okay, so when we were in Oregon coast, we stayed just outside of the little town of Brookings, Oregon, and we were at Harris Beach State Park, a great place for tent camping, RV camping, and also just a place to spend the day. So again, Harris Beach State Park. What we love doing there is it's a great place for tide pooling. There's so many great places for tide pooling along the Oregon coast, and it's amazing how different the coastal area is from the south to the north. So if you're able to experience, different areas of the coast, I recommend doing it because it actually is very different. So we love the tide pooling.
Could you elaborate on very different? What's different about the north versus the south?
The south has a lot more kind of like those sea stacks that I think maybe you picture. So obviously the Haystack Rock is further north in Cannon Beach, but there's just more of that in the southern area of the state. So it's just a little bit more, I guess, rugged in the southern part of Oregon. And I believe there's a little bit less tourism in Southern Oregon. So it's a more relaxing feel. So we actually really like the Southern Oregon coast, just because it just seemed quieter and just like a little bit more natural. There's natural beauty throughout the state, but we definitely felt it there.
Well, and we should say that when you talk about Harris Beach State Park, we haven't just gone down the coast; we've gone way down the coast.
Yeah. Brookings.
We're now almost in California.
Yeah, Brookings is the first. When you're crossing over from California, it's the first city as you cross over the border. It's definitely south. So again, what we loved about that area is the tide pooling and whale watching. You can do that all right there from the state park. North of the state park and Brookings, you'll find the Samuel H. Boardman Scenic Corridor. And what this is I believe it's about 12 miles along the coast, and it's beautiful area that there's basically just a number of pullouts where you're able to pull out and take in the scenery along the coast. And here's where you're going to see kind of like those rock formations that come to my mind when I think of Southern Oregon. So lots of those rock formations. Natural Bridges is one of the more popular stops along the corridor. So again, you're just on a pullout, so there's not really a lot of hiking involved. So this is, definitely an area to check out if maybe like hiking isn't top of your list of things to do, because you're basically able to take in the views without having to go too far. So Natural Bridges is one of the pullouts that I highly recommend. Just kind of like natural arches made out of the rocks in the sea. Indian Sands is another pullout that I recommend. So yeah, it's just great because all the views are right there. No need to hike into them. Another area I recommend in Southern Oregon is Cape Blanco State Park. So this is actually another area we camped. So they have a campground for perfect for RVing or for tent camping. And Cape Blanco is home to the oldest standing lighthouse in Oregon. So there's tons of lighthouses on the Oregon coast. So no matter where you go, you're able to go check out one or two. But this one at Cape Blanco is the oldest. Beautiful, beautiful sight to take in. And there's also a beach there that you can drive on. So this is something we had never experienced before. But driving on the beach is kind of a fun, cool thing to do. Mm-hmm. And there's a big open beach there that you're able to drive on. You kind of have to navigate the driftwood, but it's kind of fun. And then the last thing I wanted to recommend checking out on the Southern Oregon coast is the Oregon Dunes Natural Recreation Area.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So Oregon, Southern Oregon, just south of Florence, Oregon, is home to the largest coastal sand dunes in the U.S. And it's 40 miles long, and it's basically just, as far as I can see, just rolling sandy dunes that lead right up into the ocean. It's pretty amazing. So we went there a couple times, and we did sand sledding. So you can actually buy and probably rent. You can buy what looks like a snow sled, basically just a disc, and you can go sledding on the sand. They also do sandboarding there, which is basically like snowboarding, but on the sand. And there's a lot of ATVing going on the dunes. So if you're into that sort of stuff.
You don't have to bring your own. You can do a dune buggy tour of the area. And I remember, I think we either did one when I was a kid or I wanted to do one. I can't remember.
Yeah, I bet.
I remember I came home with a toy sand buggy. So
close enough. So definitely a really cool area to check out and very unique area. So definitely recommend going there if you get the chance. So those were kind of some of my highlights along I believe the whole Oregon coast is about 360 miles long or so. So there's a lot more in between there, but these are definitely some of my highlights.
Yeah, I want to add in a couple things. One is that one of the rock formations you will see on the Oregon coast is a concretion, which will look like a bowling ball in amongst the other rocks, a very round rock that forms inside of other, I believe it's inside of other, what's the kind of rock I'm trying to talk about? Not igneous rock, not rocks that form inside of volcanoes, but stratified rocks, rocks that are. Yeah, I'm going to look it up later on as we talk about it. But they're very cool shapes when you see these rocks coming out of others. And apparently the best place to see them is Cape Arago Headland, is where you can, in the cliffs, you can see these really round rocks that look like somebody was trying to hide bowling balls or something like that. It depends on the size. Up in North Dakota, we saw concretions that were as large as like 3 feet around. And just coming out of the cliff. And they're just very interesting geologically. And again, I'll figure out what I'm talking about here in a second. And then the other thing that I want to recommend probably most highly, when you say the Oregon coast, one of the places that I think of is Gold Beach.
Uh-huh.
And one of the highlights of my trip as a kid, and I keep referring back to, we did a trip on the way up to Seattle and Vancouver when I was 9 that I still remember, where we spent some time on the Oregon coast. I've been back since, but that first trip, is the most memorable, perhaps. And we did the jet boats up the Rogue River.
Oh, wow.
You can do jet boats up the Rogue River from Gold Beach, or you can also, it's a great place to do whitewater rafting. Now, I wouldn't take a 3-year-old
No.
on whitewater rafting. That wouldn't be as appropriate for your family at this time. But when you go back and they're 9 years old
Right.
or somewhat older, great place for exploring the Rogue River, which is an undammed river. You can explore it from either end. If you go inland to Grants Pass, for instance, off of Highway 101, there are also whitewater trips there, which we have done, and jet boat trips. But this is a great trip for a family with kids, is the jet boat, because it's exciting, but it's not whitewater rafting. You're not quite doing that level of excitement, that it's a little more scary.
Right.
But you jet up the river and have a picnic and then jet back down. But it's a very narrow canyon, and they'll show you, where there's, I remember when I was a kid, there was still a dump truck like halfway up the cliff in one place from the last time they'd had a flood in there. So it is a rogue river. It is a river that is untamed, and so it will occasionally have problems in the rainy season.
Oh, wow.
But
That sounds great.
fascinating trip, great trip as a kid. I'd say that, and I had forgotten about the dunes, but that was a very memorable thing. Now that you bring that back to my memory,
Yeah, it's a pretty cool area. Definitely some like a place like we've never seen before. So it was very cool.
Very cool. As we go to wrap this up, I'll do a couple of special ones here. Best place to stay with an RV on the Oregon coast?
Ooh, that's a hard one. So we really did like Harris Beach State Park. You were right on the coast. Depending on the spot you can get, you could see the sea right from your tent or from the back window of your RV. So just proximity to the ocean just does not get better than Harris Beach State Park. Then we also really liked Whalers Rest, and that is that's where we stayed at in Newport. So it's just a couple miles south of Newport, and just a great location for checking out that whole area. And just the campground itself was nice. You are within walking distance to the beach. There's just across the 101. You kind of have to run across the 101, but it's not too scary of a part there. And you're able to get to the beach. But that was another great campground. So those would probably be my top two.
Okay. And is it true that you at one time in your life lived in Southern California?
I did. So
because you said the 101, and the 101 is a shibboleth for people who lived in Southern California.
Yeah. So we did the it is the 101 in Oregon, isn't it?
No, it's 101.
Yeah, 101, right?
Oh,
did I say the? Yeah. But yes, I did live in Southern California for about 4 years, and then maybe that's where I still call it the 101 from. But we actually took.
It's always a giveaway.
We took the 101 all the way from Southern California. We did the entire West Coast, so we saw beginning to the end of the 101 in Washington State. So we saw the whole thing. But
excellent. And you mentioned Newport. And in Newport, there's also the Oregon Coast Aquarium, I just noticed. So that might be something for your next trip there.
We actually went to the aquarium, which is cool.
Okay.
We've done lots of aquariums throughout our travels. That was definitely a good one. But I honestly, if you're there for a limited amount of time, I'd highly recommend just spending your time outdoors and going to see the real tide pools. And you can see so much actual sea life and wildlife actually outside.
I'm thinking if you're there on a rainy day, though, it might be something good to do.
For sure. Yeah, it's nice to know that it's there, because you definitely want to have some rainy day activities planned as well, because those are pretty often.
You are standing in the prettiest spot on the Oregon coast. Where are you standing? What are you looking at?
Oh, goodness gracious. That is a good question. I would say Yaquina Head. And Yaquina Head is an area that I didn't mention, but it is also in the Newport area. I think it's actually a national. It's not a national park, but it's protected on a national level. I don't know exactly what they call it, but our National Parks Pass got us in there for free.
It's a Bureau of Land Management, Uquinahead Outstanding Natural Area.
There we go. There we go.
It's right there in the name.
It is absolutely outstanding. So there's a lighthouse out there, beautiful lighthouse. It's also a lot of, it's like a bird sanctuary. So there's a ton of nesting, different birds. So great for bird watching. And there's this beach there. It's not a sand beach, but it's these cobblestones. So the whole beach is covered in these cobblestones, these black, dark cobblestones, and the sound that when the waves come crashing in onto the beach and as they roll back into the ocean, the sound of the water rolling over the rocks is the most beautiful, unique sound I've ever heard. And they actually, I later on Googled it, and people have like captured that sound and like recorded it, and like it's like a known sound for like meditations and things like that. But it's just like this amazing sound with the water rolling down over the rocks. And we actually saw some sea lions from that beach. So lots of wildlife to take in. It's a beautiful, beautiful little spot.
The other thing I want to say, rocks and beaches, just reminds me, there's a couple beaches in Oregon, and I'm looking it up, and it looks like Moolac Beach, also right near Newport, about 4 miles north, is an agate beach. So again, a beach where you're going to find rocks rather than sand, but some of these rocks are agates. So if you're a rock collector, I'll put a link in the show notes to Beach Agates of Oregon that has different beaches that have this type of rock. Which, if you're not familiar with an agate, if you cut it in half, you'll see that it has an interesting crystalline structure inside.
Very cool.
Excellent. One thing that makes you laugh and say only in the Oregon coast.
That's a good one. Well, I got to say it has something to do with like the weather. Like I know what it is. So a saying that I heard while on the Oregon coast was there's never a bad day there's never a bad beach day at the Oregon coast. So because if you waited for the nice sunny days, then you might never go to the beach. So there's never a bad beach day on the Oregon coast, because no matter the weather, it's a good day to go to the beach, because it's beautiful. There's something to do no matter the weather. So no bad days. And I just thought that was funny, because you got to take advantage of the days regardless of the weather. Because like I said, you'd be waiting forever if you're waiting for 75 and sunny.
Well, as somebody mentioned in either last week's show or the show before, you haven't heard them yet, he attributed to a Danish saying, I've heard it as an English saying, there's no bad weather, only inappropriate clothing.
Yeah, so. There you go. Yeah, we invested in some high quality rain gear for the Oregon coast. So my kids have they've got adorable little raincoats and adorable little rain pants, because we were not going to miss the opportunity to be outside just because of a little rain.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize the Oregon coast in just 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Unique.
Okay.
Breathtaking.
Okay.
And let's go with... Oh, that's a hard one. How about chili?
Okay. Fair enough. And before we get to your best resource for the Oregon coast, best tip for RVing with kids?
Oh, geez, Louise. Patience. Just so much patience. Because, everyone's out of their comfort zones. If you have kids, routines and comfort zones are key to, little ones. And depending on how long you're doing this, how long you're going on your RV trip, they're going to be out of their comfort zone. So you just need to have patience, but it's the best way to experience the coast. So whether you're in an RV or in a tent, I highly recommend camping along the coast, because it's just such a unique way to take it all in. And if you don't have an RV, there's actually companies where you're able to rent RVs. So before we started RVing full time, we did a couple rentals through a company, Outdoorsy. And I actually work with Outdoorsy, and they offer It's basically like an Airbnb for RVs. So RV owners are able to rent out their
Right. They're not the ones that's sitting in the backyard.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, if you don't have an RV, I would recommend, you could fly into Portland or wherever in Oregon. You could pick up your rental RV and go hit the coast. And I have a coupon. I have a $50 off coupon for Outdoorsy if you want to share it with your listeners.
Sure. We can absolutely do that. We'll put it in the show notes if you send it to me. Yeah, my wife, when I talk about an RV trip, her response is usually have fun. But she's not going on that one with me.
Yeah.
So our guest again has been Jessica Baker from BoundlessBakers.com. And Jessica, if we wanted to send people over to BoundlessBakers.com to your best post on the Oregon coast, where are we going to send them?
Okay. So I actually have a post on the Oregon coast, so I'd probably head straight there. It covers a lot of the places that we talked about, and I think a couple more. It also has some RV. We talked about renting an RV, so I actually linked to Outdoorsy right from there, and I have my coupon right there for RV rentals through Outdoorsy. So I'd probably go right to that post.
Excellent. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your love for the Oregon coast.
Thank you, Chris. I've had a great time. I appreciate it.
In news of the community, I heard from Ali about the recent episode we did on Switzerland, who said, quick correction, I think he meant Harder-Kulm rather than Niederhorn at the end. Harder-Kulm has views of both lakes and Interlaken itself, while Niederhorn can only see one of the lakes. However, Niederhorn, I would argue, has much better views overall and is far better spot to visit than Harder-Kulm. Also, to clarify on the Olch visit, I guess he meant the Olch Arena area, where Bettmer Alp and Fischer Alp are the villages to look up as the starting points. Thanks so much, Ali. Again, if you want to support Amateur Traveler, the opportunity to support via Patreon is coming up, which will get you some additional shows, an ad-free version, first access to Amateur Traveler trips, and probably some other stuff as we figure it out. Go to amateurtraveler.com and look for the Patreon link. With that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.